Have you ever felt that quiet stirring within? That sense of something more dwelling just beyond the edges of your everyday awareness? There are moments, perhaps in the stillness before dawn, or in the pause between one breath and the next, when you become aware of a presence that is both intimate and infinite. It is neither demanding nor distant, but rather like a gentle guest who waits patiently at the threshold of your consciousness, honoring the sacred boundary between invitation and intrusion. This presence doesn't announce itself with fanfare or force its way into your awareness. Instead, it whispers in the language of synchronicity, speaks through the voice of intuition, and makes itself known through the subtle orchestration of circumstances that seem too perfectly aligned to be mere coincidence. You might notice it in the way a needed answer arrives just when you've stopped searching, or how a stranger's words carry exactly the message your soul has been yearning to hear. Consider the last time you felt truly guided, not pushed or manipulated, but lovingly led toward a choice that served your highest good. Perhaps it was in a moment of uncertainty when clarity suddenly emerged, or during a difficult decision when peace settled over one particular path. In those moments, you weren't alone in your deliberation. There was a presence, a consciousness beyond your own, offering wisdom without insisting upon it, providing direction while honoring your freedom to choose. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a vast moonlit ocean. The waves approach the shore in their eternal rhythm, each one unique, yet part of an infinite pattern. Some waves crash with tremendous force, demanding attention, while others arrive as gentle whispers, barely disturbing the sand. The forceful waves represent the invasive influences in your life, the pressures, expectations, and demands that seek to overwhelm your authentic self. But the gentle waves, those soft caresses of water against shore, these represent the sacred guest within you, the spirit that approaches with reverence for your sovereignty. Just as the ocean doesn't force its way onto the land, but waits for the natural rhythm of tide and time, the divine presence within you respects the sacred law of invitation. It will never violate the sanctuary of your soul, never breach the protective veil that surrounds your deepest self without your conscious consent. This is the fundamental difference between divine guidance and worldly manipulation. One honors your freedom while the other seeks to diminish it. What if you discovered that this presence has been with you always, not as an external force seeking to control your life, but as an invited guest who enhances and amplifies your own spiritual nature? We exist as entirely spiritual beings, each of us a unique expression of the divine consciousness that permeates all existence. This is not merely a philosophical concept, but a lived reality that shapes every moment of your earthly and eternal journey. Within the temple of your soul dwells a sacred guest, the Spirit, the Paraclete, who brings supernatural energy, profound wisdom, and loving influence to every step you take upon this earth and throughout your entire cosmic worldview. This relationship transcends the boundaries of conventional understanding. You are not merely a physical being having occasional spiritual experiences. You are a spiritual being expressing yourself through physical form, animated by an energy that connects you to the very fabric of creation itself. Your thoughts ripple through the cosmic web of consciousness. Your choices resonate with universal harmonies, and your soul serves as the meeting place between your individual will and the infinite wisdom of the Spirit. The universe itself responds to this sacred partnership. When your soul welcomes the Spirit as an honored guest, every decision becomes illuminated with divine insight. Every choice carries the potential for transformation, not only in your own life, but in the lives of all those your journey touches. You are what you think, and the universe is intricately connected to the guest within you who amplifies every decision, every choice you make. This amplification works like a sacred echo chamber. When you think a thought aligned with love, compassion, and truth, the Spirit within you magnifies that thought, sending it out into the cosmic web where it attracts similar vibrations back to you. when you make a choice rooted in wisdom and service, the universe responds by opening pathways you never imagined possible. This is not magic in the sense of fantasy, but rather the natural operation of spiritual laws that govern the interaction between consciousness and reality. The spirit that dwells within you knows the intricate pathways of your soul's evolution. It understands the lessons you came here to learn, the gifts you came to share, and the unique contribution your life makes to the grand symphony of human consciousness. It sees the perfect timing for each phase of your development, recognizes the divine appointments disguised as chance encounters, and perceives the golden threads that weave your story into the larger tapestry of universal awakening. Yet it will never override your free will, never force its wisdom upon you, but waits with infinite patience for your invitation to participate more fully in the sacred dance of co-creation. This is because the Spirit recognizes something that human consciousness often forgets, that true transformation only occurs through voluntary participation, never through coercion. Think of the most profound changes you've experienced in your life. Were they not times when you consciously chose to open yourself to new possibilities, when you voluntarily stepped beyond the boundaries of your previous understanding? The Spirit operates according to this same principle, recognizing that genuine spiritual growth must emerge from your authentic desire to expand and evolve. The development of intimacy with your spiritual guest requires the same qualities that nurture any meaningful relationship: attention, respect, trust, and consistent communication. Just as you wouldn't expect to know a dear friend without spending time in their presence, you cannot fully experience the gifts of the Spirit without cultivating a conscious relationship with this divine aspect of yourself. This intimacy begins with recognition, acknowledging that you are never truly alone, that every challenge you face is met with divine support. Every joy you experience is multiplied by spiritual celebration. It deepens through listening, learning to distinguish the gentle voice of the Spirit from the often louder demands of ego, fear, or social conditioning. The Spirit speaks in whispers, where the world shouts, communicates through feelings where circumstances argue with logic, and offers peace where chaos seems to reign. How often do you pause in your day to acknowledge this inner presence? How frequently do you create space for the quiet conversation that can occur when you step away from the constant noise of external demands? The sacred guest within you is always speaking, but its voice is subtle, refined, and respectful of your attention. It will not compete with the cacophony of modern life, but waits for those moments when you consciously choose to listen. Consider establishing a daily practice of conscious communion with your spiritual guest. This doesn't require elaborate rituals or specific religious frameworks. It simply needs your authentic intention to connect. You might begin your day by acknowledging the presence within you, asking for guidance, and expressing gratitude for the constant companionship you receive. Throughout the day, you can pause between activities to check in with this inner wisdom, asking not just, "What should I do?" but "How can I align my actions with the highest good for all?" In moments of decision, large or small, you can learn to sense the subtle guidance that emerges when you create space for spiritual input. Sometimes this comes as a feeling of rightness or peace about a particular choice. Other times, it manifests as a gentle knowing that seems to arise from beyond your analytical mind. Occasionally, it appears through the synchronistic arrangement of circumstances that seems to point clearly toward one path over another. The more you acknowledge and respond to these subtle communications, the stronger your relationship with your spiritual guest becomes. Like any relationship, it grows through interaction, deepens through trust, and flourishes when both parties feel valued and heard. The remarkable thing about this particular relationship is that one of the parties, the spirit within you, is infinitely patient, unconditionally loving, and eternally committed to your highest good. There exists within your being a veil so delicate so finely woven from the threads of consciousness itself that most people live their entire lives without recognizing its presence. This mystical boundary separates the ordinary awareness of daily life from the vast spiritual dimensions that surround and interpenetrate your existence. It is not a barrier meant to keep the sacred out, but rather a protective membrane that ensures the divine presence within you can only cross over with your conscious invitation and consent. Imagine this veil as a gossamer curtain hanging between two rooms in the mansion of your soul. On one side lies your familiar world of thoughts, emotions, plans, and daily concerns. The realm where your personality navigates the challenges and opportunities of earthly existence. On the other side dwells the infinite wisdom, unconditional love, and eternal perspective of your spiritual guest. The veil trembles with each breath you take, becoming more transparent as your awareness expands, yet never completely disappearing because its presence serves a sacred purpose. This boundary exists because your soul, in its infinite wisdom, understands that spiritual transformation must be a conscious choice, never an imposed experience. Just as a butterfly must choose to emerge from its cocoon when the time is right, your deeper awakening to the presence of your spiritual guest must unfold according to your readiness and willingness to embrace expanded consciousness. You might have felt this veil growing thin during moments of profound beauty, perhaps while watching a sunset paint the sky in impossible colors, or while holding a newborn child and sensing the mystery of life itself flowing through that tiny form. In such moments, the boundary between ordinary awareness and spiritual perception becomes gossamer light, allowing you glimpses of the magnificent presence that has been your constant companion all along. The veil also sins in times of crisis or deep need, when your usual resources feel inadequate and you find yourself reaching beyond the familiar confines of your everyday mind. It is often in these moments of vulnerability that people first consciously recognize the gentle guest within them, discovering a source of strength, wisdom, and comfort that seems to emerge from beyond their ordinary capabilities. But the veil serves another crucial function. It protects your developing consciousness from being overwhelmed by the infinite nature of spiritual reality. Just as your physical eyes need time to adjust when moving from darkness to bright light, your spiritual perception requires gradual accommodation to increasingly expanded states of awareness. The veil ensures that this unfolding happens at a pace that supports your growth rather than overwhelming your system. The sacred guest within you operates according to a fundamental spiritual law. It will never violate your sovereignty, never override your free will, but will only assume its full potential in your life when you consciously invite its participation. This invitation is not a one-time event, but an ongoing practice of opening your heart, mind, and daily experiences to divine guidance and presence. Understanding this principle transforms everything about how you approach spiritual growth. Rather than waiting passively for spiritual experiences to happen to you, or struggling to force mystical insights through sheer effort, you learn to become an active participant in your own awakening through the art of conscious invitation. This invitation can be as simple as beginning your day with a heartfelt acknowledgement: "Sacred presence within me, I welcome your guidance today. Help me to see through your eyes of love, to choose with your wisdom, and to serve with your compassion." It might involve pausing before important decisions to ask, what would love do in this situation? How can I align my choice with the highest good for all involved? The invitation can also be wordless, a feeling of opening in your heart, a conscious softening of the boundaries you usually maintain around your inner life, a willingness to be surprised by grace. Sometimes it manifests as a quality of attention, a way of listening not just to the words people speak, but to the deeper currents of meaning and connection that flow beneath surface interactions. When you extend this invitation consciously and consistently, remarkable changes begin to occur in your daily experience. coincidences become more frequent and meaningful. Solutions to problems seem to emerge from unexpected sources. Your intuition becomes clearer and more reliable. Relationships deepen as you find yourself responding from a place of greater wisdom and compassion. Even challenges begin to feel different, still difficult perhaps, but infused with a sense of purpose and possibility that wasn't there before. This is because your spiritual guest has been waiting with infinite patience for exactly this invitation. Not because it needs your permission to exist. The divine presence is eternal and unchanging, but because it honors the sacred principle that authentic transformation must emerge from your own conscious choice to grow and expand. Think about the people in your life who have had the most positive influence on you. Were they not the ones who offered their gifts freely but never forced them upon you? Who shared their wisdom without insisting you accept it? Who loved you unconditionally while respecting your autonomy? The sacred guest within you operates according to these same principles of respectful love, offering infinite gifts while honoring your freedom to receive them in your own time and way. Once you begin to consciously invite the participation of your spiritual guest, you quickly discover that this divine presence has been attempting to communicate with you all along. You simply hadn't learned to recognize its language. Unlike human conversation that relies primarily on words, the Spirit speaks through a rich vocabulary of feelings, synchronicities, symbols, and what can only be described as direct knowing. You might notice this communication in the way certain thoughts seem to arise spontaneously in your mind, carrying with them a quality of truth and wisdom that feels beyond your ordinary mental processes. These thoughts often come during quiet moments, while walking in nature, taking a shower, or in that drowsy state between sleeping and waking. They arrive not with the argumentative quality of analytical thinking, but with a gentle certainty that feels both familiar and profound. The Spirit also speaks through your emotional responses to people and situations. Have you ever met someone for the first time and felt an inexplicable sense of recognition or connection? Or walked into a place and immediately felt either deeply at peace or subtly uncomfortable, without any logical reason for your reaction? These responses often reflect the spiritual guest within you, recognizing something that your conscious mind hasn't yet processed. Perhaps most remarkably, your spiritual guest communicates through the orchestration of external circumstances. This is where the mystical principle, as above, so below, becomes tangible in your daily life. When you're wrestling with a particular question or challenge, pay attention to the themes that begin appearing in your conversations with others, the books or articles that seem to find their way to you, the chance encounters that carry unexpected relevance to your situation. It's common to think of something and then have something similar manifest in your external experience. This isn't mere coincidence, but rather evidence of the deep interconnectedness between your inner spiritual reality and the outer world of form. Your spiritual guest, being connected to the infinite intelligence that orchestrates all of creation, can arrange these meaningful coincidences as a way of confirming guidance, answering questions, or simply reminding you that you are deeply seen and supported. The key to recognizing these subtle communications lies in developing what might be called spiritual peripheral vision, the ability to remain aware not just of the obvious content of your experiences, but of the deeper patterns and meanings that weave through them. This requires a quality of attention that is both focused and relaxed, engaged yet receptive. Regular practice of quiet reflection helps develop this capacity. At the end of each day, you might review your experiences not just for their practical outcomes, but for their symbolic significance. What themes emerged? What unexpected connections appeared? Which interactions left you feeling expanded and which ones felt contracted? Over time, you begin to see the elegant intelligence that has been guiding your path all along. Everything that unfolds in your external experience serves as a reflection of your inner spiritual state and the choices you make in partnership with your divine guest. This is perhaps one of the most profound and sometimes challenging truths of spiritual existence. The universe operates as a vast mirror, continuously reflecting back to you the quality of consciousness you bring to each moment and decision. This doesn't mean that you are responsible for every difficult circumstance that enters your life, but rather that the universe responds to the vibrational frequency of your thoughts, emotions, and choices with mathematical precision. When you align your decisions with the wisdom of your spiritual guest, when you choose love over fear, service over selfishness, truth over convenience, the universe responds by creating circumstances that support and amplify these highest expressions of your nature. Consider how this plays out in your daily interactions with others. When you approach people from a place of genuine curiosity and compassion, you often find that they respond by revealing their most interesting and endearing qualities. When you enter situations expecting the best possible outcome while remaining peacefully detached from specific results, you frequently discover opportunities and solutions that exceed your original hopes. Conversely, when you approach life from a place of fear, suspicion, or scarcity, the universe mirrors these vibrations back to you through experiences that seem to confirm your worst expectations. This isn't because the universe is punishing you, but because the spiritual law of attraction operates with the same consistency as physical laws like gravity. It simply reflects back to you the quality of energy you're broadcasting. Your spiritual guest understands these cosmic laws intimately and seeks to guide you toward choices that will create positive reflections in your external experience. This is why the subtle voice of the Spirit often encourages you toward kindness when you're feeling irritated, toward patience when you want to rush, toward forgiveness when you'd prefer to nurse a grievance. The Spirit recognizes that these higher choices will ultimately create experiences that serve your greatest good and contribute to the well-being of all. This understanding transforms how you view both opportunities and challenges in your life. Instead of seeing circumstances as random events that simply happen to you, you begin to recognize them as the universe's response to the consciousness you've been cultivating. This recognition empowers you to become a more conscious co-creator of your reality, working in partnership with your spiritual guest to generate experiences that reflect your highest potential. The mirror of universal reflection operates not just individually, but collectively. When groups of people align their consciousness around common spiritual principles, love, compassion, service, truth, they create collective reflections that can transform entire communities and cultures. This is why spiritual communities, despite their human imperfections, often become sources of healing and inspiration that extend far beyond their individual members. The sacred reciprocity. There exists a fundamental principle woven into the very fabric of existence. The universe always responds to your choices with perfect reciprocity. This cosmic law ensures that whatever quality of energy you send out through your thoughts, words, and actions will eventually return to you multiplied and magnified. This is natural, cosmic, and sacred, as inevitable as the sunrise and as reliable as the changing seasons. This principle operates regardless of whether you're conscious of it or not. But awareness of this law allows you to work with it deliberately rather than unconsciously. When you understand that every choice you make creates ripples that will eventually return to you as waves, you naturally become more thoughtful about the quality of energy you send forth into the world. Your spiritual guest, being intimately connected to this cosmic web of cause and effect, continuously offers guidance that will help you create positive reciprocity in your life. Those gentle promptings toward patience, kindness, honesty, and service aren't arbitrary moral suggestions. They're practical wisdom for creating the kinds of experiences you most deeply desire. When you choose to respond to someone's anger with calm presence instead of reactive defensiveness, you send out vibrations of peace that will return to you as peaceful experiences in unexpected ways. When you offer genuine appreciation to others, You create an energetic signature that attracts appreciation back to you from various sources. When you make choices based on love rather than fear, you align yourself with the fundamental creative force of the universe, which responds by creating circumstances that reflect this alignment. The timing of this reciprocity varies greatly. Sometimes the return comes almost immediately. You smile genuinely at a stranger and receive an unexpected kindness before the day is over. Other times, the reciprocity unfolds across months or years as the seeds of your positive choices gradually mature into abundant harvests you could never have imagined when you first planted them. This is why consistent alignment with your spiritual guest is so important. Each moment of choosing love over fear, each decision to serve rather than grasp, each choice to trust rather than control adds to an accumulating momentum of positive energy that eventually becomes a powerful force for good in your life and the lives of others. The reciprocity principle also explains why negative choices tend to create negative consequences, though this isn't a form of cosmic punishment, but simply the natural operation of spiritual law. When you send out energy based on fear, anger, greed, or manipulation, the universe mirrors this energy back to you through experiences that match these vibrations. Your spiritual guest gently attempts to redirect you away from such choices, not to restrict your freedom, but to spare you from the inevitable negative reciprocity they create. Understanding this principle transforms your relationship with both success and struggle. Success becomes an opportunity for gratitude and increased service rather than a source of pride or entitlement. Difficulties become invitations to examine the kinds of choices you've been making and to align more closely with the wisdom of your spiritual guest. Both experiences become part of the ongoing education in conscious living that the universe provides, transforming through conscious choice. Every moment presents you with countless opportunities to choose your response to life's circumstances, and each of these choices represents a chance to strengthen your partnership with the sacred guest within you. This is where the rubber meets the road in spiritual development, not in dramatic mystical experiences or elaborate rituals, but in the countless small decisions that make up the fabric of your daily existence. The transformation begins when you recognize that you always have a choice in how you respond to any situation, regardless of how limited your external options might appear. Even in the most constraining circumstances, you retain the fundamental freedom to choose your internal response, your attitude, your focus, and the quality of consciousness you bring to the experience. Your spiritual guest operates like a wise counselor who is always available for consultation before you make these choices. In the pause between stimulus and response, that brief moment when you can step back from automatic reaction, lies an invitation to check in with the divine wisdom within you. In this space, you can ask, what response would serve the highest good? How can I use this situation as an opportunity for spiritual growth? What would love do here? This doesn't mean you'll always make perfect choices, or that spiritual growth requires you to be perpetually serene and selfless. The spiritual journey includes making mistakes, learning from them, and gradually developing greater wisdom and compassion. Your spiritual guest doesn't judge your imperfect choices, but simply offers guidance for making better ones next time. The key is developing the habit of conscious consultation with your inner wisdom before making important decisions. This practice might begin with major life choices, career changes, relationship decisions, financial commitments, but ideally extends to smaller daily choices as well. How you speak to the grocery store clerk, whether you choose to remain calm in traffic, how you respond to criticism, what you do with idle moments, all of these become opportunities for spiritual partnership. As this practice deepens, you begin to notice a quality of grace entering your life. Decisions that once felt heavy and burdensome become infused with a sense of divine support. Challenges that previously triggered anxiety or anger begin to feel like opportunities for growth and service. Relationships become arenas for practicing unconditional love rather than battles for control or approval. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen consistently when you maintain conscious partnership with your spiritual guest. Each choice made in alignment with divine wisdom strengthens this partnership and makes it easier to access this guidance in future situations. Over time, consulting with your inner spiritual counselor becomes as natural as breathing, creating a life that flows with increasing harmony, purpose, and joy. The ultimate realization is that you and your spiritual guest are not separate entities, but rather different aspects of the same divine consciousness. The choices that serve your highest good also serve the highest good of all, because at the deepest level, there is no separation between your well-being and the well-being of the entire universe. The language of the divine. In the quiet chambers of your heart, a conversation has been taking place throughout your entire existence. A dialogue so subtle, so refined, that you may have mistaken it for your own thoughts, your own intuition, your own inner wisdom. Yet this gentle communication carries qualities that distinguish it from the ordinary chatter of the analytical mind. A sense of peace that transcends understanding, a knowing that feels both ancient and immediate, and a love so unconditional that it accepts you completely while simultaneously calling you toward your highest potential. This is the voice of your sacred guest, speaking in the intimate language that divine consciousness uses to commune with the human soul. Unlike the harsh demands of ego or the anxious warnings of fear, this voice arrives as a whisper, not because it lacks power, but because it recognizes that the most profound truths are often received in the quiet spaces between thoughts, in the gentle pauses between heartbeats. You've heard this voice countless times throughout your life, though you may not have recognized its source. It was there in the moment of decision, when you felt inexplicably drawn toward one choice over another that seemed more logical. It spoke when you met someone new and felt an immediate sense of trust or caution that had no basis in observable evidence. It whispered when you walked into a new environment and felt either deeply at home or subtly uncomfortable, without any rational explanation for your response. This divine communication doesn't arrive with fanfare or demand immediate attention. It respects your autonomy too deeply to override your conscious mind or emotional reactions. Instead, it offers its guidance like a devoted friend who shares wisdom only when invited, who speaks truths wrapped in love, who remains present through all of life's storms, while never imposing its perspective upon your experience. The sacred guest within you communicates through multiple channels simultaneously. Sometimes it speaks through what you might call intuitive knowing, information that simply appears in your awareness without any logical process of reasoning. Other times, it communicates through your emotional responses, creating feelings of expansion around choices that align with your highest good and contraction around those that don't serve your spiritual development. Perhaps most remarkably, your spiritual guest often communicates through the orchestration of external circumstances. When you're wrestling with a particular question, notice how life seems to arrange meaningful encounters with exactly the right people, books, or experiences that shed light on your dilemma. This isn't coincidence, but rather evidence of the infinite intelligence that your sacred guest taps into, a cosmic consciousness that can coordinate events across time and space to provide exactly the guidance you need at precisely the moment you're ready to receive it. The art of listening. Developing your capacity to hear and recognize the subtle communications of your spiritual guest requires cultivating a quality of inner listening that differs markedly from ordinary attention. This is not the focused concentration you might use to solve a problem or learn new information, but rather a relaxed receptivity that creates space for grace to enter your awareness. This inner listening begins with learning to distinguish between the voice of divine wisdom and the various other voices that compete for your attention throughout each day. The voice of your spiritual guest carries certain unmistakable qualities. It speaks with patience rather than urgency, offers guidance without criticism, and always points toward choices that serve love rather than fear. In contrast, the voice of ego tends to be insistent, comparative, and focused on personal advantage. The voice of anxiety creates urgency and catastrophic scenarios. The voice of social conditioning repeats familiar patterns and expectations. Learning to recognize these different qualities of inner communication is like developing your ability to distinguish different musical instruments in a symphony. With practice, you can identify each voice even when they're all playing simultaneously. Creating regular periods of silence and stillness greatly enhances your capacity for this subtle listening. This doesn't require elaborate meditation practices or specific spiritual techniques, though these can certainly be helpful. Simply spending time each day in quiet reflection, perhaps while sitting in nature, taking a contemplative walk, or even during routine activities performed with mindful attention, creates the inner space where your spiritual guest can communicate more clearly. During these periods of receptive listening, rather than asking for specific answers to predetermined questions, try simply opening your awareness to whatever guidance wants to emerge. You might begin with a general invitation. What do I most need to understand today? How can I serve the highest good? What deserves my attention and care? Then allow yourself to rest in quiet receptivity, noticing whatever thoughts, feelings, or insights arise without immediately analyzing or judging them. The guidance you receive through this practice often comes not as dramatic revelations, but as gentle shifts in perspective, subtle adjustments in attitude, or quiet clarity about next steps. Sometimes it manifests as a felt sense of rightness about a particular direction, or a peaceful knowing that dissolves previous anxiety or confusion. Other times it arrives as creative inspiration, compassionate understanding of others, or simple appreciation for the present moment, protection and guidance in daily life. Your spiritual guest serves not only as a source of wisdom and inspiration, but also as a loving protector, alerting you to situations that might harm your physical, emotional, or spiritual well-being. This protective function operates through the same subtle communication channels, intuitive feelings, emotional responses, and meaningful synchronicities, but carries a distinct quality of caring vigilance. You may have experienced this protection as a sudden reluctance to go somewhere you had planned to visit, only to learn later that you avoided an accident or unpleasant situation. Or perhaps you felt an inexplicable urge to call someone, discovering that they desperately needed exactly the support you were able to offer. These aren't random impulses, but rather expressions of the divine intelligence within you that perceives patterns and possibilities beyond ordinary awareness. This protective guidance extends beyond physical safety to include emotional and spiritual well-being. Your sacred guest might create a feeling of unease about a relationship that appears attractive on the surface, but would ultimately prove harmful to your growth. It might generate enthusiasm for opportunities that your logical mind dismisses, but that would actually serve your soul's evolution perfectly. The key to benefiting from this protective guidance lies in learning to trust your subtle perceptions, even when they conflict with rational analysis or social expectations. This requires developing faith in the spiritual intelligence within you, not blind faith that ignores practical considerations, but rather the mature faith that recognizes wisdom can come through channels other than logical reasoning. Sometimes this protective guidance manifests as a sense of timing, feeling that a particular action should be delayed or accelerated beyond what seems reasonable from a practical perspective. Your spiritual guest exists outside the linear constraints of time and can perceive the optimal timing for various actions based on countless variables you couldn't possibly calculate consciously. Other times, the protection comes through what might appear as obstacles or delays that initially feel frustrating but ultimately prove beneficial. That canceled meeting that freed you to have an important conversation with a family member. the missed flight that resulted in meeting someone who changed your life, the job rejection that led to a far better opportunity. Your spiritual guest sometimes protects you by redirecting your path away from situations that would have limited your growth or happiness. Learning to recognize and cooperate with this protective guidance transforms your relationship with uncertainty and unexpected changes. Instead of seeing them as disruptions to your plans, you begin to perceive them as possibly divine interventions designed to keep you aligned with your highest path. This doesn't mean becoming passive or failing to take reasonable precautions in practical matters. Rather, it means holding your plans lightly, remaining open to course corrections, and trusting that the intelligence guiding you sees patterns and possibilities that extend far beyond your current perspective. The more you acknowledge and respond to this protective guidance, the more clearly you'll recognize it in future situations. Like any relationship, your partnership with your spiritual guest deepens through interaction, trust, and mutual respect. As this partnership strengthens, you'll find yourself moving through life with greater confidence and peace, knowing that you are never alone and never without the loving protection of divine wisdom. Beyond invitation and intrusion, there exists a fundamental distinction that shapes every aspect of your spiritual journey: the difference between genuine invitation and forceful intrusion. This understanding illuminates not only your relationship with your sacred guest, but also your interactions with all of life's experiences and relationships. Your spiritual guest embodies the principle of perfect respect. It enhances and amplifies your authentic self without ever overriding your sovereignty or violating your free will. Consider how this principle manifests in your daily experience. When you feel genuinely inspired to act with kindness, create something beautiful, or offer service to others, this inspiration carries a quality of joyful spontaneity. It feels like the natural expression of your truest self, rather than an imposed obligation. This is your spiritual guest working through you, not by forcing predetermined outcomes, but by creating conditions where your highest nature can emerge organically. In stark contrast, intrusive influences in your life, whether they come from other people, social pressures, or your own fear-based patterns, carry a quality of violation. They demand compliance, threaten consequences for nonconformity, and seek to diminish your authentic expression in favor of some external agenda. These influences break down the protective boundaries around your soul, whereas your spiritual guest always strengthens and honors these sacred boundaries. This distinction becomes particularly important when evaluating the various influences that compete for your attention and allegiance throughout your life. Genuine spiritual guidance never seeks to make you smaller, more fearful, or more dependent. It never threatens punishment for questioning or independent thinking. It never demands that you surrender your discernment or ignore your deepest knowing. Instead, it consistently calls forth your highest potential while respecting your pace and honoring your choices. Your sacred guest operates according to what might be called the law of gracious presence. It makes its wisdom, love, and power available to you without ever forcing these gifts upon your experience. Like the sun that offers its light freely to all, while never demanding that anyone step out of the shadows, your spiritual guest illuminates possibilities while respecting your freedom to choose which ones you'll embrace. This understanding transforms how you approach spiritual development. Rather than striving to force mystical experiences or demanding that the divine presence make itself known in particular ways, you learn to create inviting conditions and then allow the relationship to unfold naturally. You discover that the most profound spiritual growth often occurs not through dramatic breakthroughs, but through countless small moments of conscious collaboration with the loving intelligence within you. The veil of consent. The mystical veil that separates ordinary consciousness from spiritual awareness serves a purpose so profound that it operates as one of the fundamental laws of spiritual existence. This veil can only be crossed with your authentic consent, not mere intellectual agreement, but the deep soul-level willingness to embrace expanded consciousness and greater responsibility for the quality of your inner life. This protective boundary exists because premature exposure to spiritual realities beyond your current capacity to integrate them would be overwhelming rather than helpful. Just as a gardener doesn't force a bud to bloom before its natural time, the divine intelligence that governs your spiritual development ensures that your awakening unfolds at a pace that supports genuine transformation rather than spiritual inflation or confusion. The veil becomes more permeable as you demonstrate readiness through your choices, attitudes, and way of being in the world. Each time you choose love over fear, service over selfishness, truth over convenience, you signal your readiness to receive greater spiritual awareness. Each time you respond to life's challenges with patience, compassion, and wisdom rather than reactivity, you prove your capacity to handle expanded consciousness responsibly. This process of earning spiritual access through demonstrated readiness ensures that increased awareness comes paired with increased wisdom and maturity. It prevents the spiritual pride that can arise when someone gains access to mystical experiences without first developing the humility and selflessness necessary to use such awareness for the benefit of all. Your spiritual guest recognizes your level of readiness with perfect accuracy and offers exactly the degree of guidance and revelation that will serve your growth without overwhelming your system. Sometimes this means withholding information you think you want in favor of the insights you actually need. Other times it means allowing you to struggle with certain challenges until you develop the inner resources necessary to handle greater responsibilities. This doesn't mean you're passive in the process of spiritual development. Your consent involves actively cultivating the qualities that demonstrate readiness, developing emotional maturity, practicing selfless service, studying wisdom traditions, purifying your motivations, and consistently choosing higher responses to life's circumstances. The beautiful paradox is that as you stop grasping for spiritual experiences and instead focus on becoming the kind of person capable of handling such experiences wisely, the veil naturally becomes more transparent. Your spiritual guest responds to genuine spiritual maturity by sharing increasingly deeper levels of guidance, wisdom, and divine connection. The sacred democracy of the soul. Within your being exists a profound democracy where every aspect of your consciousness, mind, emotions, body, and spirit has a voice in determining the direction of your life. Your spiritual guest participates in this inner democracy not as a dictator imposing its will, but as the wisest member of your inner council, offering guidance that harmonizes all aspects of your being toward your highest good. This inner democracy means that authentic spiritual growth never requires you to suppress or deny any part of yourself. Your emotions, your intellect, your physical needs, your social relationships, all of these remain important considerations in your decision-making process. Your spiritual guest doesn't seek to override these other voices, but rather to help you hear them more clearly and integrate their wisdom in service of your overall well-being. Consider how this works in practical situations. When you're facing a difficult decision, your mind might analyze the logical pros and cons. Your emotions might signal what feels right or wrong. Your body might react with energy or fatigue to different options. And your spiritual guest might offer insights about long-term consequences and alignment with your soul's purpose. The wisest choices emerge when all of these perspectives are heard and honored. Your sacred guest serves as the integrating intelligence that helps you weave together these various streams of information into coherent decisions. It recognizes that you are a multi-dimensional being and that sustainable choices must work on all levels: practical, emotional, physical, and spiritual. This is why divinely guided decisions often feel so satisfying and complete. They address the legitimate needs of your entire being rather than just one aspect. This democratic approach to inner guidance prevents the spiritual bypassing that can occur when people try to live solely from their higher nature while ignoring the wisdom of their emotions, body, or practical mind. Your spiritual guest understands that you came into physical embodiment for important reasons and that your earthly experience is meant to be honored and integrated, not transcended or escaped. The result is a way of being that feels both deeply spiritual and completely human. You don't become less emotional or less intelligent as you develop spiritually. Instead, your emotions become more refined and your intelligence becomes more wisdom-informed. You don't lose your personality or individual preferences. Rather, these become purified expressions of your authentic self rather than reactive patterns based on fear or conditioning. Learning to facilitate this inner democracy requires developing what might be called conscious leadership within your own being. Like a skilled facilitator, you learn to create space for all voices to be heard without allowing any single perspective to dominate inappropriately. You develop the capacity to hold complexity, to sit with apparent contradictions until deeper truth emerges, and to make decisions that honor both your immediate needs and your long-term spiritual development. The eternal dance of becoming your relationship with your sacred guest extends far beyond the boundaries of this single earthly lifetime. It is a partnership that spans the infinite journey of your soul's evolution, a cosmic dance of consciousness that began before time and will continue beyond the dissolution of form into pure spirit. Understanding this eternal perspective transforms how you view both the significance and the impermanence of your current circumstances. Every experience you encounter, every challenge you face, every relationship you enter serves the greater purpose of your soul's education and development. Your spiritual guest, being connected to this larger evolutionary context, can guide you toward experiences that serve not only your immediate well-being, but also the deeper curriculum of your soul's growth across multiple dimensions of existence. This perspective doesn't diminish the importance of your current life. Rather, it reveals the profound significance of every choice you make. Each moment becomes an opportunity to strengthen your partnership with divine wisdom, to develop greater capacity for love and service, and to contribute to the collective awakening of human consciousness. Your spiritual guest helps you recognize which experiences will serve your soul's long-term development and which might provide temporary pleasure, but ultimately delay your spiritual progress. The eternal nature of your soul means that the investments you make in spiritual development compound across lifetimes and dimensions of existence. The patience you develop in difficult circumstances, the compassion you cultivate toward challenging people, the wisdom you gain through both success and failure. All of these become permanent treasures of consciousness that can never be lost or taken away. Your sacred guest operates from this eternal perspective, sometimes guiding you toward experiences that may be difficult in the short term, but serve your soul's long-term evolution. This is why spiritual guidance sometimes points you toward challenges rather than away from them, toward service rather than ease, toward growth rather than comfort. The divine intelligence within you recognizes that your soul came here to develop and expand, not merely to be comfortable or happy in conventional terms. This understanding helps you approach life's difficulties with a fundamentally different attitude. Instead of seeing challenges as evidence that something has gone wrong, you begin to recognize them as precisely the experiences your soul selected for its development. Your spiritual guest helps you extract the maximum growth and wisdom from every situation, transforming even painful experiences into stepping stones toward greater consciousness. The infinite nature of your spiritual journey also means that there is no rush, no deadline for achieving particular states of awareness or accomplishment. Your sacred guest operates with infinite patience, recognizing that true spiritual development unfolds according to its own organic timing rather than arbitrary external schedules. This perspective frees you from the spiritual anxiety that can arise when you compare your progress to others, or judge yourself for not advancing as quickly as you think you should. The ripple effect of spiritual partnership. As you deepen your conscious relationship with your sacred guest, the effects extend far beyond your personal experience to touch every person and situation you encounter. This happens because spiritual development inevitably increases your capacity to serve as a channel for divine love, wisdom, and healing energy in the world. When you consistently align your choices with the guidance of your spiritual guest, you begin to emanate a quality of presence that others recognize, even if they can't articulate what they're sensing. People feel safer around you, more authentic, more hopeful. This isn't because you become perfect or immune to human struggles, but because your willingness to be guided by divine wisdom creates space for others to access their own inner guidance more clearly. Your relationship with your sacred guest also models for others what spiritual partnership can look like. When people observe someone living with genuine peace, joy, and purposefulness despite life's inevitable challenges, they become curious about the source of such resilience. Your example plants seeds in their consciousness that may not sprout immediately, but will eventually contribute to their own spiritual awakening. This ripple effect operates through multiple channels simultaneously. Your more conscious responses to difficult people and situations help break negative cycles of reactivity, creating space for healing and understanding. Your willingness to speak truth with love challenges others to examine their own assumptions and patterns. Your commitment to service inspires others to consider how they might contribute to the collective well-being. Perhaps most importantly, your partnership with your spiritual guest contributes to what might be called the morphic field of human consciousness, the collective spiritual atmosphere that influences how easily others can access higher states of awareness. Each person who develops a conscious relationship with their inner divine presence makes it slightly easier for others to do the same. This collective dimension of spiritual development reveals why your personal growth is never merely personal. Every step you take toward greater consciousness serves the evolution of human awareness as a whole. Every choice you make in alignment with divine wisdom contributes to the planetary shift toward greater love, compassion, and wisdom that many people sense occurring in our time. Your sacred guest understands this interconnected nature of consciousness and sometimes guides you toward actions whose primary purpose is to serve the collective awakening, rather than your immediate personal benefit. This might involve offering support to someone when it's inconvenient, speaking truth in situations where silence would be easier, or taking on responsibilities that stretch your comfort zone but serve a larger purpose. The ultimate recognition. As your partnership with your sacred guest matures and deepens over time, a profound recognition begins to dawn in your consciousness. The divine presence you have experienced as your constant companion, your wise counselor, your loving protector, gradually reveals itself to be not separate from you, but rather the deepest truth of what you actually are. This recognition doesn't diminish the reality of your individual personality or negate the genuine experience of receiving guidance from a source beyond your ordinary awareness. Rather, it reveals that the boundary between you and your spiritual guest has always been somewhat artificial, a necessary fiction that allowed your consciousness to develop the capacity for divine partnership. The ultimate spiritual realization is that you are not a human being who sometimes receives visits from divine consciousness, but rather divine consciousness expressing itself through human experience. Your sacred guest is not an external entity that occasionally offers guidance, but the eternal aspect of your own being that has never forgotten its divine nature. This recognition brings with it a profound sense of homecoming, as if you've been searching everywhere for something that was always present in the depths of your own being. The love you felt from your spiritual guest reveals itself as the love that you actually are. The wisdom you've received shows itself to be your own eternal knowing. The peace that has supported you through all of life's storms emerges from the unshakable foundation of your true identity. Yet this recognition doesn't end the practical value of spiritual partnership. It transforms it into something even more intimate and immediate. Instead of needing to consult with your sacred guest, you learn to live from the place where divine wisdom and human experience meet. Instead of receiving guidance from an external source, you discover yourself to be the very source from which wisdom flows. This shift in identity has profound practical implications for how you navigate daily life. Decisions become less complicated because you're no longer trying to figure out what someone else wants you to do, but rather allowing your deepest truth to express itself naturally. Challenges feel less overwhelming because you're no longer facing them as a limited human seeking divine support, but as divine consciousness temporarily focused through human experience. The love that flows through your relationships, the creativity that emerges in your work, the peace that remains stable regardless of external circumstances. All of these reveal themselves to be expressions of your true nature rather than gifts from an external source. This doesn't make you feel proud or superior, but rather infinitely humble and grateful to serve as a conduit for the divine love that seeks to express itself through every conscious being. The integration of wisdom. Having recognized the intimate connection between your individual consciousness and the divine presence within you, the focus shifts from receiving spiritual guidance to embodying spiritual wisdom in every aspect of your daily existence. This integration represents the flowering of your spiritual partnership, the point where divine consciousness and human experience merge so completely that there is no longer a sense of separation between sacred and ordinary moments. This integration doesn't happen overnight or through a single moment of realization. Instead, it unfolds gradually through countless opportunities to choose divine responses over habitual reactions, to express love in situations that traditionally trigger fear, and to maintain inner peace regardless of external turbulence. Each of these choices strengthens the neural pathways and energetic patterns that allow divine consciousness to flow more freely through your human experience. You begin to notice that the qualities you once associated with your spiritual guest, unconditional love, infinite patience, perfect wisdom, unshakable peace, are actually emerging as natural expressions of your own transformed consciousness. The compassion you feel for difficult people no longer feels like something you're trying to manufacture, but rather like the spontaneous overflow of your genuine understanding. The patience you demonstrate in challenging situations doesn't require effort or self-control, but flows naturally from your connection to eternal perspective. This integration affects every dimension of your human experience. Your relationships become laboratories for practicing unconditional love. Your work becomes a venue for expressing creative service. Your challenges become opportunities for demonstrating the resilience that comes from knowing your true identity. Even routine activities like eating, sleeping, or walking become infused with sacred awareness. The key to this integration lies in consistent practice of what might be called conscious embodiment, the ongoing choice to live from your deepest spiritual understanding rather than from surface-level reactions and conditioned patterns. This requires moment-by-moment vigilance, not in the sense of tense watchfulness, but rather in the sense of loving attention to the quality of consciousness you're expressing. When you notice yourself slipping into old patterns of fear, judgment, or reactivity, you gently redirect your attention back to the divine presence within you. When you catch yourself taking circumstances too personally or too seriously, you remember your eternal identity and allow that perspective to restore your equilibrium. When you feel overwhelmed by the complexity of human existence, you return to the simple truth that you are divine love expressing itself through temporary human form, the art of sacred service. As your spiritual partnership matures into integrated wisdom, you discover that service becomes not something you do, but something you are. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to offer the gifts of consciousness, peace, love, understanding, encouragement that naturally flows through someone who has recognized their divine nature. This service doesn't require dramatic gestures or special qualifications. More often, it manifests as simple presence. The quality of attention you bring to listening to someone who needs to be heard, the patience you offer to someone struggling with challenges, the encouragement you provide to someone doubting their own worth. Your very presence becomes a blessing because it carries the fragrance of someone who has found peace with themselves and life. The beauty of this natural service is that it doesn't deplete your energy, but actually increases it. When you serve from the overflow of divine love, rather than from personal effort or obligation, you discover that giving and receiving become the same activity. Every act of service strengthens your own connection to the infinite source of love and wisdom within you. This service also extends to challenging situations and difficult people. Instead of seeing problems as interruptions to your spiritual practice, you begin to recognize them as invitations to demonstrate the practical power of divine consciousness. Someone's anger becomes an opportunity to practice unconditional love. A crisis becomes a chance to offer stability and wisdom. Conflict becomes a laboratory for discovering creative solutions that serve everyone's highest good. Your sacred guest, now recognized as your own deepest nature, guides you toward opportunities for service that align perfectly with your unique gifts and circumstances. You don't need to search for ways to help others. Instead, you simply remain open to the natural flow of love, seeking to express itself through your particular form of human experience. This approach to service is sustainable because it doesn't depend on your personal resources, but rather on your willingness to serve as a conduit for unlimited divine love and wisdom. You discover that the more you give from this place of spiritual fullness, the more connected you feel to the source of all abundance and joy. The ongoing journey, recognizing your essential unity with divine consciousness, doesn't mark the end of your spiritual journey, but rather the beginning of its most creative and joyful phase. No longer focused primarily on personal healing and development, you become available to participate consciously in the larger evolutionary purposes that are unfolding through human experience. This participation might take countless different forms depending on your unique gifts, circumstances, and calling. Some people are drawn to teach or write about spiritual principles. Others express their realization through art, music, or creative endeavors. Some serve through healing work or counseling. Others contribute through conscious parenting, ethical business practices, or environmental stewardship. The specific form matters far less than the consciousness from which your service flows. Whether you're raising children, growing food, creating beauty, or solving practical problems, when your actions emerge from conscious partnership with divine wisdom, they contribute to the collective awakening and healing that our world desperately needs. Your ongoing journey also includes continued deepening of your capacity to embody divine consciousness in human form. There are always subtler levels of integration to explore, more refined expressions of love to discover, and greater degrees of service to embrace. The spiritual path is infinite because consciousness itself is infinite, always revealing new depths and possibilities for growth and expression. This understanding keeps you humble, despite whatever degree of realization you may have achieved. Rather than feeling that you've arrived at some final spiritual destination, you recognize that you've simply learned to participate more consciously in the eternal dance of consciousness, knowing itself through countless forms of experience. The joy of this ongoing journey lies not in reaching some future state of perfection, but in discovering the inexhaustible richness present in each moment when it's met with full awareness and open heart. Every day brings fresh opportunities to express love more purely, to serve more effectively, and to contribute more consciously to the magnificent unfolding of life itself. Your sacred guest, now recognized as your own divine nature, continues to offer guidance, but it feels more like the natural wisdom of your authentic self rather than direction from an external source. This guidance leads you toward experiences that will stretch your capacity for love, deepen your understanding of truth, and expand your ability to serve the highest good of all life. The ultimate recognition is that this journey of spiritual awakening and service is not separate from the journey of being fully human, but rather represents its deepest fulfillment. You don't transcend your humanity through spiritual development. You discover what it truly means to be human when that humanity is informed by conscious connection to divine love and wisdom. In this recognition, every aspect of your existence becomes sacred, not because you've escaped the ordinary world, but because you've discovered the extraordinary divine presence that has always been expressing itself through every moment of ordinary experience. This is the gift your sacred guest has always been offering, not escape from human experience, but the recognition that human experience, when consciously embraced, is itself a form of divine communion. As you continue on this infinite journey, may you always remember that you are never alone, never without guidance, and never separate from the divine love that is your truest nature. The sacred guest within you is not going anywhere. It is the eternal aspect of yourself that will guide and support you through all the adventures of consciousness that lie ahead. Trust this presence, honor this partnership, and allow your life to become a beautiful expression of the divine love that you are.